Welcome to Beyond the Battlefield, Stories of Mountain and Air, the podcast that delves into the diverse and compelling careers of the Vermont National Guard and its members. I'm your host, Sergeant Dennis Enriquez, Public Affairs Specialist for the Vermont National Guard Joint Force Headquarters. Each episode features a candid conversation with current military personnel in order to shine a light on their personal experiences in and out of uniform. Join us as we uncover the untold stories behind these soldiers and airmen and explore the motivations that drive individuals to pursue a career in the armed forces. I'm here today with Major Gene Enriquez, a world traveler who seems to be on the go more than Carmen Sandiego herself. And so today we ask, where in the world is Gene Enriquez? Sir, good to have you here. How you doing?
Hey, Dennis. Thanks for having me here.
I want to start off with just talking a little bit about your background. You are the director of the SPP, or the State Partnership Program, and I want to know a little bit about kind of how you fell into that role, how your pathway from joining the Vermont National Guard to where you are now.
Well, first of all, thanks again for having me. I'm glad you're really interested in my story and the story of the State Partnership Program. I'll do my best to tell the story in a way that kind of can help someone understand how we operate and how one can get to being a part of the State Partnership Program. So I joined the Vermont National Guard almost 20 years ago in 2004, enlisted. But prior to that, I went to Norwich University, which is really what drew me into the Vermont National Guard. So my story in short, I am a first-generation American. My family comes from the Philippines, so I did grow up overseas for most of my childhood. Half of my first 18 years were in Europe, in Switzerland. The other half were predominantly in the Philippines. So I essentially came to America with a very different perspective than someone who's grown up here. So especially living in Europe and in Switzerland, where that's the home of the United Nations, there's a lot of international activity happening there. I've always had a passion for international affairs. So over my career, I think it has been a part of me as a soldier, as an officer, and I think it's really brought me where I am today. So, briefly enlisted for about 3 years before becoming an officer, but ever since I was an officer, most of my assignments have included some form of international activity, whether it's a deployment or working with one of our State Partnership Program nations. And I even had the unique and really blessed opportunity to be assigned at the embassy in North Macedonia for 3 years as part of the State Partnership Program. So that's pretty much how I got there. I think all of those experiences stacked on one another and really brought me to where I am today. Now, I've had various actual operational assignments in between. I haven't just done international affairs. I don't think anyone can just do that. But I would say doing your actual job in the military really contributes to doing a good job in our international affairs because we're the face that our partner nations see and depend on for advice, counsel, etc. So the State Partnership Program, it's a really unique opportunity for guardsmen to get overseas. I'm not sure if you're aware, but it was founded in the early 90s, in 1993. And essentially when the Soviet Union and Yugoslavia dissolved, the countries that emerged from those two former blocks of nations started to seek out U.S. and Western assistance. And the National Guard offered its hand to contribute to those responsibilities, and the SPP was formed in 1993 with 13 original nations, and our small state of Vermont was the 10th to raise its hand and offer its partnership with North Macedonia. So we've been working with them for 31 years now. We picked up Senegal, the Republic of Senegal in West Africa in 2008. And then 2 years ago in 2022, we partnered with the first modern European nation, the SPP, which is Austria. So all three of those countries have been a real pleasure to work with in this job.
How do our guardsmen play a role in each of those state partnership roles?
Sure. Well, I think the first thing we have to establish is we need to get you to the third country. And I think that's North Macedonia you have to visit.
Correct, yes.
So there are many ways. There are many ways to be part of the SPP and to partner with our nations in their countries or host them here in Vermont. So each country has, as you were alluding to, their own role in the world or in their region, for example. And I'll go over that very briefly and then talk about how a guardsman can become marketable for an experience like that. So North Macedonia is our oldest partnership, right? 31 years, so the better part of 3 decades, longer than most of our guardsmen have been serving in the National Guard. They were part of the National Guard's SPP to join NATO, essentially. If you boil it down, their goal of joining the State Partnership Program was to eventually become a NATO member, eventually the European Union, and integrate with the West, like many of the original State Partnership Program nations. So their focus has been on essentially trying to develop their military to match and be interoperable with the U.S. military and the militaries of NATO. Does that make sense?
Yeah, absolutely.
So it's been very focused, especially recently, on tactical exercises, on SOPs, standard operating procedures, and then some leader engagements to ensure that the country was leading the right path towards NATO. Now, they joined NATO in 2020, which I happened to be the bilateral affairs officer stationed in North Macedonia. When that happened, it was a really momentous occasion. So on the other hand, Senegal is a very different nation. First of all, it's in Africa. It's in West Africa. It's the westernmost country in Africa. And it's the only country in that part of the world that has not experienced a coup d'etat. So it's stable. So the U.S. government tends to depend on Senegal to be a provider of security. They do a lot of peacekeeping missions, to boil it down. They support their fellow West African nations, and they also deploy to East Africa where there tend to be more issues, Somalia, Darfur, Sudan, places like that. So our focus has been on those units that have deployment missions in a peacekeeping role. And there's also a small, there was, and to a degree there is still a small security issue in the southern part of the country where the army deploys to southern Senegal in a peacekeeping role, counterinsurgency role. So a lot of our focus has been on that too. Now, with Austria, this is an interesting situation because Austria is a neutral country, like Switzerland. Austria is not a member of NATO, but they're a member of the EU. Yet they have a goal of remaining interoperable and keep up with their neighbor nations in NATO. And one of the avenues to do that is to work with the U.S., and specifically not the U.S., but with the Vermont. So all the U.S. military activity taking place in Austria is mostly the Vermont National Guard. So if those are the backgrounds between the 3 countries that we work with, you look at your career as a military officer or NCO or enlisted person and see where those capabilities match. We try to be very good in the State Partnership Program as communicating these opportunities to our officers and NCOs and enlisted on both the Air and Army National Guard. But it's also really incumbent on that soldier or airman to raise it to their leadership or bring it to the attention of someone who can get them involved in the SPP. You, for example, have a capability as a public affairs NCO that is so important to tell the message of what we do. And we try to include public affairs specialists with everything we do overseas because it's such a great story to be told. Best example, in Senegal this year and for the last 7 or 8 years, we've been conducting medical exercises, the MedRex, the medical readiness exercise. I know you and 35 others from Vermont participated in this 2-week exercise in Senegal, and was it not a unique experience?
It was incredible, absolutely unique. You learn so much in such a short period of time, and I think that's what's sticking with me from that trip is just how much you can really get, not only from the culture, from the people, the lifestyle, and also, when it comes to job, like there is no more hands-on than that, when it comes down to it. And as I often say, I am a former combat medic, and so that one kind of hits me near and dear to the heart because, being in that medical situation, in those medical environments, in a place that is so really in need of those types of interventions, it's really something that sticks it out. So, yeah,
I'm
absolutely.
really glad to hear that, because that kind of feedback is what gets people excited. That's what gets our leadership excited with being involved in activities like this. So for the medical exercise, for example, obviously having a medical background is critical to going on that mission, but we found there are other ways to involve other airmen and soldiers. But having direct input or direct action, so to speak, with live patients, live situations, live medical interventions. Some of our providers saved lives out there, right? And that's an experience that will probably carry with our people, our Vermont National Guard personnel, through their lives. So I would say the Senegal MedRex is one of the very unique activities that we have with our state partners. Other states are doing MedRexes, but Vermont tends to do large ones in very remote locations where there's a lot of need because they have limited resources. And to be able to work in those conditions like you were in 100 plus degree temperatures in non-air conditioned rooms, working with patients and families of patients and caring for those people in such an environment is such a long-lasting impact that every guardsman has an opportunity to participate in.
How is it you go about kind of selecting those? And I'm assuming there's a little bit of a priority of work happening about like what the mission is.
Absolutely. So we, at the SPP, at our level, we try our best not to micromanage who's selected. Now, you do need to be somewhat of an expert in the subject that you are going to cooperate with your partners with, because we want to make sure that we're sending our best people and working with our partners. There's a lot of expectation that we'll be sending our best people, if that makes sense. So there should be some baseline expertise for the individuals that are going to each of these missions. But we actually don't dictate who's going. We provide recommendation. We set the parameters for what the expectations are for the individuals who will be on these missions. And we ask our 06 commands from the Army and Air National Guard to make those selections. So 90% of the time, our decisions are being made at the 06 command level of who's going to represent the Vermont National Guard at each of these events. Now, some could be very fortunate, for example. So if you are in the 86th Infantry Brigade Combat Team, you are most likely going to participate in the immediate response exercise in North Macedonia in 2025. Most of the brigade is going there. It's going to be their AT. So if you happen to be in the 86, it's going to happen. And it's great that we can get so many of our people in one go to North Macedonia. There are other units from the Garrison Support Command, like our MPs from the Law Enforcement Detachment. Some public affairs folks, our band, will send some personnel to that exercise as well, and other support. So again, most of those, if not all of those personnel for these exercises are directed or selected from their leadership. So I'd say, again, it's incumbent on the individual to make it clear to their leadership that they want to do these things, because if you don't voice your opinion, you might be missing an opportunity.
After this last trip to Senegal, I noticed that there were people from other states. Do you work with other states in the SPP? Do they provide opportunities for our Vermont Guardsmen? Is there an avenue there, or is that something that can be worked out in the future?
No, 100%. So General Hokanson, who is about to retire as our Chief of National Guard Bureau, he has always used the catchphrase regarding the state partnership program: when you have access to one state, you have access to all 54. And he means it. And the the program means it. The SPP is an enterprise. There are over 106. Actually, there are 106 nations today partnered. When interestingly, 31 years ago, we started with 13. So that's almost, if not more than half of the recognized nations in the United Nations. So 106 partnered with our 54 states and territories. So in this last situation with New Hampshire is partnered with Cabo Verde or Cape Verde, which is a small island nation off the coast of Senegal. They would like to do a MedRex also. They'd like to do a medical exercise in their country. So for this year's medical exercise, we brought 5 New Hampshire airmen with us, and they're reciprocating the opportunity to 5 of our Vermonters to go with them next year in 2025 to do their medical exercise. So that's just one small example where our neighboring states can support one another on these missions. Now, there are some situations where our partner nation asks for a capability that we don't have. Senegal, for example, again, has requested assistance in special operations. Vermont has some special operations officers and NCOs within our ranks, but we don't have a unit. So in the last 2 years, we've built a relationship with the 20th Special Forces Group in Massachusetts. 20th SFG has supported events in Senegal on our behalf, if that makes sense. So those are 2 small, and they both happen to be neighboring nations, neighboring states that are supporting our partner nation, if that makes sense. Now, 3 weeks ago, I was part of a conference in Botswana. Botswana is the partner of North Carolina. So North Carolina is partnered with the 3 countries along that corridor of Botswana, Zambia, and Malawi. So there was a senior defense conference in Botswana a few weeks ago. So we were able to participate in that along with various adjutant generals and their representatives. So every so often, the regional events will invite the non-star like Vermont to one of those conferences. So yes, while we are partnered with 3 nations, there are many instances where we can travel to other nations as part of the SPP.
Yeah, that's wonderful. That's a great opportunity. I think that, if people are interested in traveling the world and don't understand this program or maybe don't even know about it yet, that this is kind of hopefully a little bit of an eye-opener for them, just to say, hey, this exists, and, part of your service, you can travel. We're not quite the Navy, but we're getting there.
Join SPP and see the world. That has actually been one of my quotes about trying to market the SPP. Yeah, and in many, if not all, of our engagements that we do overseas, we try to create at least one cultural experience for the soldiers, because it's such a shame if we just send them there to do work for 4 days and they won't get to see the country they're in. Now, don't get me wrong, there's some Vermonters that would be happy just to do the work and come home. Yeah. But I've found that most of our people, most of our airmen and soldiers appreciate getting half a day, 1 day to go see the sights, get to know the country. Because in reality, if you are in the Vermont National Guard, you will go to these countries again down the road. The more senior you rise in the organization, you will likely be back in the country doing something else. So there are also some opportunities where these soldiers can take leave en route with their travel. So they go for 4 days of work, then they choose to go on leave, invite their families to join them, and see interesting things. So it was a very unique experience for me. And these are, like I said, unique opportunities that we can take advantage of by having our personnel involved in the SPP.
Thank you, everyone, for joining us today on Beyond the Battlefield, Stories of Mountain and Air. I'm your host, Sergeant Dennis Nunez, and as always, stay curious, stay inspired, and always keep ascending.